Hello and welcome to Facebook Live or YouTube Live. I think we're streaming on both of them tonight. So welcome to our class with, it's nice to see you again, Craig.
Good to see you
And
too. How are you doing?
thank you. I'm fine. And maybe we can start by just welcome to everybody if you're joining. If you've been with us before, you know that you can open the chat file and then you can communicate with us during the class through the chat file. And if you're new to the Facebook Live, please open the chat window so that you can communicate with us. And you can remember that you can see this class afterwards on my YouTube channel, which is at Put It Like This, or you can see it on Craig's YouTube channel, which is at Mansion Inglés. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. There were some problems
mansioningles.com.
with YouTube earlier. I hope the problems have been solved. I was told by StreamYard that they're having problems streaming. So
Oh,
if you are watching on YouTube, please say hi, hello. Let's make sure everything's working. Although
mm-hmm.
if it's not, there isn't much we can do, but we
Very good.
hope you can join us on YouTube.
Uh-huh. Well, to start with, while we're waiting for some people to join us, I will tell you just a little bit about who we are. My name's Lynne, and I'm from putitlikethis.com. I'm an online teacher of English, and I specialize in creating individual courses for people. So if you're interested in preparing for an exam, or maybe you are a business person and you have a presentation to prepare for, or maybe you want some help learning how to write in English or to teach in English, then if you go to my website, putitlikethis.com, you'll be able to see all of the types of courses that I might be able to offer you and where I might be able to help you. So that's at putitlikethis.com. And Craig, would you like to tell the viewers about where you're from?
It will be my pleasure. My name's Craig. If this is your first time watching, welcome. And mansioningles.com is where you can find lots of material to study English for free, especially if you're a Spanish speaker. And if you prefer to do your English studies while you're at the gym or walking the dog, we do have a podcast over at inglespodcast.com. And every Sunday, we publish a podcast that will help to take your English up to the next level. Lynne, what are we talking about today?
Well, today, whether you like it or not, I think most people around the world this week will be talking about football. And so the class today, we're going to call it Football Crazy. But it's not just for football lovers, it's also for football haters or football people who are ambivalent. But we do think that right now, because of course the World Cup has just started, I think it's fair to say that probably in every country of the world, people are going to be talking at least something, a little conversation you're going to have about football, even if
Even
you
if
hate
they're
it.
really annoyed about it, and it's
Yeah,
always on the
exactly.
television and people are always watching the football and I hate football, at least you're speaking about the football when you're complaining. So it is
Yeah.
on everybody's TVs, on the internet, it's on everybody's minds at the moment
Uh-huh.
for good reasons and for bad reasons. So as Lynne said, even if you're not a hardcore football fan, I hope that you'll enjoy this because you could give us your opinion and tell us what you think about the World Cup and football in
Yeah.
general.
And maybe you can pick up some vocabulary along the way. So if you learn some new vocabulary, you can give a better opinion to the people that you want to talk about football with.
And we have people watching. So hi to Gemma.
Mhm.
Thanks for joining us so
Yeah. Hi,
quickly this
Hema.
week,
Thanks
Gemma.
for
Good to
joining
see
us
you.
again.
And we have a hardcore football fan
Oh,
in the chat. Gina, my friend from the UK, who is a hardcore Tottenham Hotspur fan. Tottenham
oh.
Hotspur, if you're watching in Latin America or somewhere else in the world, is a London team. Spurs,
Uh-huh.
Tottenham Hotspur, and Gina is football crazy for that team. But apart from that, she's a really nice person. Hi, Gina. Love you.
What do you mean apart from that,
Well, I'm
Craig?
Arsenal, you see, and Arsenal and
Oh,
Tottenham
okay.
Hotspur have a very strong rivalry that goes back a
Oh.
long time. They're not good friends when they're playing each other, are they, Gina? So that's the
Okay.
reason. But Gina's
So
lovely.
that's the reason. Okay. I thought you were being disrespectful of football fans. I thought that you were that you didn't like football. So maybe we can start and ask everybody, do you actually like football? Can you write in the chat and tell us if you are a lover or a hater
Or
uh,
ambivalent, maybe
or
you just don't
ambivalent
care.
or you just don't
Ambivalent
care?
means you have no strong opinion either way, so you don't really
Hmm.
care much or think
Hmm.
about football. Or
What
does it
about
annoy
you,
you?
Craig, then? Are you a lover or a hater? You said that you support a team, so I presume you're a lover, are you?
I used to be very, very keen on football. To be keen on something is to like it a lot. And when I went to see games in London with my dad years ago, then yes, I was a big football fan. But then I started traveling and I lived quite a few years abroad and I stopped following the team. You can follow a football team, which means you look at the results, you like to watch them on TV, you try and go and see them live at playing games, then you're following a team. And I stopped following Arsenal for years. They also weren't winning, so that helped. But now they're winning games and they're doing really well. So I started to support them again. How
Ah,
fickle is that?
so you're a lover. Uh-huh. Now you use the word fickle. Fickle's a nice word, everybody. Fickle means that you change your idea. One minute you love them, one minute you hate them, but you're not very constant. That's a nice word. I like that. I describe myself as a fair weather supporter.
What does that mean?
So that means that I support them when the weather is good, which is not literal in my case. I don't mean it literally, but for example, I'm not a football fan. I don't follow a team. I have a couple of teams that I think I like. I like, of course, my home team, which in England is Sunderland. And Sunderland people, some of my friends are very keen football supporters. So if I'm in England, I'll say, oh, yes, I'm interested. I support Sunderland because, of course, that's where I'm from. But when I lived in Germany and Germany was playing, I kind of supported Germany. And when I'm in Spain, now that I'm in Spain, I kind of support Spain.
So
So
you're
it
quite
kind
fickle
of,
as well, really.
I'm quite fickle too. And I think I'm a fair weather supporter because really I only get into football when it's a very big competition.
What does
So
to get into mean?
to get into means to like, to love, or to become very fascinated or obsessed with something, to get into it. I only really get into it when there are big competitions. So when there's the European Cups or especially the national games, like in now with the World Cup. And then I am a fair weather supporter. And this is the fair weather because I have a certain ranking. So, first of all, of course, I'm English. So, my first priority is to support England. But when England get knocked out, that means when they lose a game and they're out of the competition, they get knocked out. When England gets knocked out, then I change my allegiance and then I support Spain. And if Spain gets knocked out, then I support
Germany.
Germany. So I only support the team where the sun is shining. So that's why I'm a fair weather supporter, I think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That
Because I
I'm
always want to win. I don't want to watch the football if my team is losing. So
yeah.
I want to support somebody in a game and I want a team, one of the two, to win. I'm not ambivalent really. No.
But unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of weeks at least, you'll know that at the moment there's a World Cup being played in Qatar.
Hmm.
And it started on 20th of November.
Hmm.
So the question is now, are you fed up with it? Is it too much football coverage on the news, on TV, on your news channels, however you follow the news and keep up with the news? And the expression to be fed up with something is to be bored or maybe annoyed about
Hmm.
something or disappointed, especially by something you've experienced for a long time. For example, if you're working in a really boring job for many years, you could easily say, I'm really fed up with this job. So are you fed up with the football, or are you enjoying it? Let us know in the chat. We'd be interested to know what you think. Gemma has a comment. I'm not very interested in football, but I like to follow the championship. Yeah.
Just like me, Hima.
Same
I'm like
as
that too.
same as Lynn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lola says it depends on the team. Have you got that one? Yeah. Lola says
Hi,
it
Lola.
depends on the team, but in general, you love it. Yeah. Yeah.
So I bet you were happy today and Spain won 7-0.
Is Lola from Spain? Do you know Lola?
Yes.
Right?
Hi, Lola.
Yeah. Ah, okay. So yeah,
So
you
she'll
would
be
be
very
very
happy.
happy because they just won 7-0.
Your
That's
German
right.
friends, not so much.
No, not so much.
Jalabi.
Okay. Now, maybe we can, because we're thinking we have quite a lot of vocabulary, but we don't want to kill you with vocabulary. So we thought this time it might be nice if you can decide, the people who are watching now, can you decide if you're a lover, you're a hater, or you're a fair weather supporter? And then, depending on your feelings, could you think of 5 adjectives that describe your feelings when you think about football? So 5 adjectives. And then I thought maybe we can see the adjectives and we can add, maybe you learn from each other. And then if there's any other adjectives, we can add some more vocabulary. I can see that Christina is back with us. Hello, Christina. We haven't seen you for a
Hi,
while.
Christine. Good to see you.
Hi, nice to see you again. So write in the chat 5 adjectives that describe how you feel about football. While you're doing that, Craig, have you got 5 words that describe how you feel about football?
Not very strong adjectives. I'd say I'm interested in big games, important games. Conversation comes to mind because as a man, men like to talk about football. It's a neutral subject, but you can get very motivated and excited and involved in the conversation and passionate about football. So another one is cars, for example. Men talk about cars, men talk about football, not only men, but it's the perfect topic for a pub because it's neutral. You don't have to talk about your feelings and you don't have to wear your heart on your sleeve if you're talking about your football team. So conversation comes to mind because I like to keep up with what's going on. I like to know what's happening in football so that when I am in a conversation with other football fans, I can understand what they're talking about and I can contribute to the conversation.
That's really interesting because one of my negative adjectives about football would have been boring. And what I find most boring about football is actually not really the football itself, but it's the conversations that people have about football.
Yeah, I get that. I understand that.
So that's quite different from what you say because you like it because it's a neutral topic to talk about.
Well, no, I don't. I don't like it because it's a neutral topic. I know that it's a topic that other men like to talk about.
Yeah, they do.
So I try to keep up with. I remember once I was at a wedding and we were all sitting around the table at the beginning of the meal, and people didn't know each other. And I turned to the man next to me and I said, what do you think about Valencia then? How are they playing lately? And that started a conversation because it's a very neutral topic and we were chatting. So it breaks the ice to talk about football.
It does. It's quite, maybe it's, I don't know whether the other people feel this, but I think that that's also quite sort of typical of the way men would break the ice. And I think women might break the ice in a different way. You know, they would maybe
How would a
comment
woman
on,
do it, perhaps?
I think maybe in that situation, in a wedding or something, you might comment on somebody's clothes or say, that's a really nice bag that you've got, or you're looking lovely. I love that dress, you know. I mean, I don't want to stereotype here, but the last thing that I would start a conversation about is
It's
football.
football. Yeah.
So if I was with a group of strangers, I think I would probably look at something in the room and start the conversation about that. But
Yeah.
that's interesting because maybe that's a difference between women and men. I don't know.
Emma's saying that she's not really living it the same way, maybe enjoying it.
Yeah,
Enjoying it the
Gemma.
same way as other past championships.
Yeah, a lot of Spanish make that mistake with this living, which we don't use that in English, but you could use a verb like experiencing it. That I
Yeah.
think that's the closest to it, but I think more natural here is I'm not really enjoying it in the same way as
Yeah.
I did in the
And
past.
I think that might have something to do with the politics involved in this current World Cup, but we will talk about that a
We'll
bit
talk
later,
about
Gemma.
that
So
later.
don't
Yeah.
go anywhere. Stay
Uh-huh.
tuned, as they say. We'll talk about that a bit later.
Right, so I'm still waiting for adjectives. Come on, people, start writing in the chat. 5 adjectives that describe your feelings about football. Craig, you only gave 3. You said conversation,
Conversation, skill,
skill,
skillful footballers, and money, because a lot centers around money these days. And I like rugby very much, and rugby doesn't tend to have the same crazy focus on money as football does.
as football
Rugby
does.
seems to be very much more down to earth, which is why I like rugby. Or someone famous once said that rugby is a man's game and football is a thinking man's game, which is an interesting
A
comparison. But I don't
thinking man's game.
Yeah, because rugby is very violent and physical, a lot more
Violent.
physical than football.
Gina
Gina's
has
put,
got great. Gina. She said, "No way." Now that's a great phrase, and I associate that too, Gina, with football, because you're watching it and then you see something that you don't like, and you go, "No way! They scored a goal, or they did something that it's not allowed, or maybe the referee has given a red card or a yellow card to a player because of a foul." And then you at home on your sofa, or if you're a supporter in the stadium, everybody's screaming, "No way, I can't believe it." That's a really nice expression.
It is.
Frustrating is an interesting adjective too.
Yeah.
And that's true. Football can be really frustrating because you want them to do something and you see something happens and you get quite frustrated because we're not really involved in it, are we? It's the players on the field doing things. And you, maybe when you see the picture of the football game, you can see opportunities that maybe the opportunities are missed or maybe they are fulfilled. But you see things that probably the poor players who are actually playing the game, they just don't see.
Yeah.
So for the supporters, it can be frustrating. Exciting. That was one of my adjectives. I think football is, when I like it, when I watch it, which is not always, but when I do, I don't think you can say it's a really exciting sport. People get very carried away with it. Do you know the phrasal verb to be carried away with something, which means that you let your emotions go with it. To be carried away.
So that's expression. Yeah.
You get very carried away. So it is very exciting and happy, but only if you win, Gina, don't you think?
Yeah. only if you win. So
yeah. Alberto's got some lovely ones too. Let's have a look at those, Alberto. Thank you for sharing
enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm is the noun. Enthusiasm. Passionate, amazing, and awesome.
Awesome's a very popular adjective now. It's becoming very, very popular in the English language. I think it came in from Australia and New Zealand. They were the first places that I heard awesome being used.
Before America? Before North America?
Well, I don't know. I don't think I heard it so much in America, but I definitely heard it a lot in Australia and New Zealand. But anyway, it's everywhere now. So awesome just means brilliant or very good.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah, they're all very
They're all
positive
very
adjectives.
positive. Yeah. Hmm.
So we've
Yeah.
got so far we've got no football haters here, or at least not vocal ones. People are being
Uh-huh.
quite
Being
positive.
quite thing. I put if I wanted to have
Exciting.
some negative words. Oh, Hema said exciting, definitely. I
Hmm.
definitely agreed. Also, I put loud. Don't you think that football is a very loud sport?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it
Uh-huh.
is.
Because it's the supporters in the stadium, but even if you watch it at home, people get so carried away that even in my house, if I'm just watching it with my husband and my daughters, that we end up shouting or
Shouting at the TV.
cheering. Or and when the football, I live in a flat like many people in Valencia, and we always know when Valencia is playing and the football is on the television. We don't follow it on the television, but we always know when Valencia is playing because we
You can
hear
hear
our
it. Yeah.
neighbors shouting when they've scored or when they haven't scored. So it is a very loud sport. Uh-huh.
Have you ever been to a live game?
Well, I have, but I have a very funny story about my live game, Craig. Do you want to hear about my funny story?
I'm sure everyone wants to hear about your
Well,
live
it's not
game.
that funny. It's not that funny. But when in Sunderland, football was really important. And strangely enough, my father was one of the few people who was not a football supporter. And my dad did not like football.
Hmm.
And my dad did not like the idea of girls being involved with football. And I don't think it was because he was a sexist. He wasn't a macho or anything like that. But at that time in Sunderland, when going to the games was a very, very masculine thing to do. And the men and the men and the boys used to get very carried away with their emotions. And there was a lot of swearing and there was a lot of drinking and there was a lot of bad behavior. And
Yep.
my dad really didn't want his daughters exposed to that. So he was very against us going to football games. And in actual fact, when I was a teenager, it wasn't allowed. So my dad would not allow me to go to a football match. But my uncles were all football supporters because most men were. And my uncle used to think my dad was being silly. And there was often a disagreement, like a friendly disagreement, but they would often argue about whether girls should go to see the football or
So
not.
you wanted to go, but your
And I
dad
wanted to
wouldn't
go,
let
but
you.
my dad always said no. And then my dad took my uncle's daughter, so his niece, my cousin. She wanted to go to a Beatles concert. And her father said, "No, you're not going to a Beatles concert." And my dad and mum took her secretly to a Beatles concert. And my uncle was very angry when he found out. So he said to my father, "Now that you took my daughter to a Beatles concert, I'm going to take your daughter to a football game." So that was how I got to my only football game that was live, like in a big stadium. I've watched football, like amateur football, but it was the only game I went to in a big football stadium. And I think there was about 40 or 50,000 supporters because Sunderland had very big crowds
How did you feel there?
many
Did you
years
feel
ago.
excited? Was it impressive?
Well, I didn't really understand what was going on. I remember being very cold because it
Yeah.
was in the winter. There were no seats because at that time, I'm talking about the 70s. So it was all standing room. Yeah. So we were standing. And I think my dad was really right. It was very rough. I remember that I heard a lot of swearing,
Yeah.
a lot of drink,
Yep.
and there was even something that really disgusted me as a teenager, so I never wanted to go again. There were men who, instead of going to the toilet, they were actually relieving themselves behind me. directly onto the ground.
Urinating behind you on the ground.
Urinating behind us. I didn't want to use that word. It was too graphic. So I said relieving themselves. That's a nice way to say it in English. So I turned around and I remember my uncle saying to me, don't look, because I was thinking, what is that sound of water? Where's that coming from? And I turned around and they were peeing behind me.
Yeah, I can remember
So it
that
was
as well.
quite horrible, really. I suppose they don't do that now. Do they do that now?
Well,
No.
because of the football violence in the UK, a lot of grounds or stadiums now have only seats because that prevented a lot of the violence. When I used to go and watch Arsenal, and Gina will remember this, then the people would run and there would be battles and fighting because it was really easy to move around.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, putting people in seats has really done a lot to stop that. So I think many grounds now have seats. It's a different experience as far as I know.
Yeah.
But maybe Gina can correct me if I'm wrong. Christine's got some nice expressions. A nail biting experience.
Oh, that's good.
When you bite your nails because you're nervous and your team is losing, and Hammy gets nervous as well. She can't sit for long. That's what disappoints me, because I get so excited and so full of hope. And then when the team loses, it's like a big depressing letdown.
It does. It really affects you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we identify so much with it. Because you just said we lost, don't you? And that's the way I feel when I watch it. I think it's we, and really, I have nothing to do with the football. I never watch them other times. But you really take it personally, don't you, when they lose? And I also hate those penalty kicks. You know, when they haven't got a score, and then it's a draw. So it's like 0-0 or 3-3. And then they have to do those are they called penalty kicks or penalty shootout?
Shootout, yeah, penalty.
Penalty shootout.
Yeah, penalty shootout.
And that's terrible, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Christine says during the Spain-Costa Rica match, I was on the edge of my seat all the time. Well, not after goal number 5, surely, Christine. You must have relaxed a little bit when they scored number 4 and number 5.
I know, they got 7 goals. What kind of a win was that?
Fantastic.
So, Christine, you watched the first Spanish game. I couldn't watch it because I was actually teaching at the time. But you must be a hardened football supporter if you've watched the very first game. Yeah, you were there watching it. She must be a supporter.
A lot of happy Spanish people around today.
Mm-hmm.
And Gina says, yeah, it's right. There are seats a lot of the time. A lot of the time there are seats. Oh, so they have a seat, but they don't always sit in it. They're standing up and blocking the view from people behind them.
But do they, Gina, because she's a real football fan, do they still urinate in the where they are, or do they go to the toilets now? Has it changed since 1970?
I have a feeling that Gina's so involved and interested in what's happening on the pitch, on the football field, that she doesn't notice if anybody is going to the toilet in the next seat. She's watching the game. She's a hardcore fan. A
hardcore fan. No, she said toilets. Oh, well, then there you are. So maybe I should go back to a game, and then I know what I'm talking about. Okay.
So should we move on? What should we do next?
Let's move on.
Move on to another question, or look at some vocabulary? Vocabulary or question? I'm easy.
Well, you could maybe show some about the spectators and the audience, because a lot of people make mistakes with those words, don't they?
Yes, we spoke about the football spectators before, and that's when you go and you watch the game live. But spectators, that word, a spectator, is generally connected to watching sports like football, tennis, rugby, cricket, whereas audience, you're watching a show or a film in the cinema or a ballet or an opera. So the audience is when there's a performance of singers or dancers or some kind of play or concert, and spectators when you're watching sport.
Mm-hmm. I think the difference is to do with the performance as well, because what you're watching, if whatever it is you're watching, the people that you're watching, if they are performing for you, then you are the audience. But if you are just watching them, you're just looking at them. And of course, the players in a football game, they have another objective. They're not there to please us, they're there to win the game. So I think that's the difference. That's another difference. I mean, obviously, theatre, film, music, you are the audience. Yeah. But a spectator is somebody watching somebody else do something.
And team and side, whose side are you on means which team do you support? So you can use the verb to support a team. For example, in football, 11 players is a football team. Tottenham Hotspurs is a football team. And you can also call them a side. So my side won yesterday means my team won yesterday.
Yeah. And that's usually, I use that one all the time because I don't really have a specific team that I follow. I would always ask somebody, whose side are you on? So in football, there's only 2 teams. So it's meaning, which one do you support? Which one do you want to win? Whose side are you on? And you can also say, who do you want to win? And the 2 teams are opponents. So that when there's 2 teams playing against each other, they are opponents.
To begin the game, you use the phrasal verb kick off. It's a phrasal noun and a phrasal verb to kick off, and it's the kickoff. But we can also use that idiomatically. If you're in a business meeting, for example, you can say, who's going to kick off the meeting? Who's going to start the meeting? Because the first kick of the game is the start of the game. So it's a very useful phrasal verb, even if you don't like football.
Yeah, and they often call it, if you have a project, the very first meeting, in order to explain what the project's objectives are and how they're going to work, that is often called a kick-off meeting. We're going to have the kick-off meeting in 2 weeks, which is the first official announcement of the new project.
Another word that you can also use idiomatically is to tackle. To tackle means to try to take the ball from the opponent, from the other team. So if you tackle successfully, then you get the ball. But you can also tackle a problem. You can tackle a difficult situation, which means you deal with it. So you have to tackle an issue you're having with the insurance company, for example, or you have to tackle a problem in your relationship, etc.
And then injury, that's when the players get hurt and then they stop the game, and usually the doctor comes on and has a look. And some players, if they have an injury, maybe that prevents them from playing. So you might say, is so-and-so going to play in the game? And no, he has an injury, so he's out of the game. And they also have injury time, which is the last word in this list. We might as well do them together, those. And that's, they add on extra minutes at the end of the game if the game has been stopped repeatedly for injuries.
Yeah, extra time. Yeah, they add on extra time. Linesman. Yeah, you have 2 referees that run up and down along the side of the pitch. You can say pitch, you can say field, football pitch. Doesn't really matter. And those 2 referees that run up and down are called linesmen. So the linesman will look for a foul, some player kicking another player illegally or pushing, or handball or offside. So the linesman helps the referee to make decisions on the game.
Do they say lineswomen? Do women do that job now?
I have never seen a woman in a man's game. Have you, Gina? Maybe in women's football? Because to remind everybody, England ladies won the World Cup this year, just to remind you about that. So I'm pretty sure there were female lines
It's because of that word, because referee could be either sex, couldn't it? It could be a woman or a man. But when you say linesman, we often have a version of the word, which is a lineswoman, of course, if it's a woman. Okay.
Hi, Mamen. Good to see you. It's been a while. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us live. You finally found us. Yeah, we're here every 2 weeks. What else do we have? Goal post. Yeah, you score a goal in football, and the post is at the side. The goal post is the 2 side bits, and the
frame.
bar is the one at the top. So
And
you can
often
hit the post with the ball.
That's right. Often the ball, if it doesn't go in, it hits the goalpost or it hits the bar. Penalty area is the area of the pitch where you're allowed to take a penalty kick. So if there's been a foul, isn't it? I'm trying to explain the rules and I don't know, so you better do that one.
It's the big box in front of the goal. It's the area in which the goalkeeper can use his or her hands in that big box. And if there's a foul inside that box of the defending team, then the referee should give a penalty or a handball. If somebody touches the ball with their hand deliberately, then they can also give, or we can say award, a penalty. So,
and then you have a free kick. There's a free throw as well. A free
throw in,
a throw in. And then of course we talked earlier about the penalty. Was that the penalty? No, the penalty shootout. Penalty kicks are things at the end of the game.
If there's a draw,
is the penalty kicks is when they have to decide.
If it's a World Cup final, somebody has to win. So they do the ridiculous thing of awarding penalty kicks until one player misses, which I don't like at all. But that's them's the rules, as they say. Those are the rules. Those are the rules. Let's talk about something controversial because there has been a lot of controversy, polemico, if you're a Spanish speaker, around this World Cup in Qatar. So what do you think about having the World Cup in Qatar? Do you think, well, it's the sport that's important? And now that the games are underway, now that they've started, does it really matter where it is? We should be focusing on the sport. Or do you have a different opinion? Many people haven't gone to the World Cup to watch their team because of many reasons. So we'd be really interested to know what you think. And while you're writing in the chat and giving us your opinion about where it is being held, there's the passive. The games are being held. The World Cup is being held in Qatar. What's your opinion, Lynn?
Well, before I do that, I'm going to give you a new word. I read an article about, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and they have, every year there are some new words that go in the English dictionary. And one of the new words that has gone into the English language this year is the word sports washing. Have you heard that? I can't hear you, Craig. Have you muted your microphone?
Yes, I was blowing my nose. I apologize. Yeah,
that's
no,
right.
I have not. I have not heard
washing.
of
well,
that
that's
word.
Just officially entered the dictionary in English, so you can impress people by using a brand new word, sports washing.
What does it mean?
And sports washing, I believe, is when you are trying to make something appear legitimate or acceptable. Because you say it's sport and sport is a human thing. So some people have been objecting to the World Cup in Qatar because they say that there are problems with human rights in Qatar. They're also saying that Qatar isn't very interested in football or hasn't got a football tradition. And they're objecting to the fact that maybe the money has played a bigger role about why the games are in Qatar. And some people say if you accept that those are big problems, sports washing is trying to say, no, it's in the name of sport, so that's okay. That is sports washing. It's a kind of word that they've made up from brainwashing. Brainwashing is when you have been convinced to think a certain way, but it's maybe not your real opinion or not your free will.
And it's one word, is it, Lynn? Sports washing.
Sports
I've written
washing,
it
yeah.
correctly.
I don't think I've given a great definition, but if you buy a new dictionary soon, then you can get a better one.
Gina's given us an answer about the referees. There are women referees, but not the female linesmen, apparently, which is interesting. I don't know why. Interesting.
Okay. So going back to what you said to me, what do I think about having the World Cup in Qatar? I'm a bit mixed. I've read lots of opinions for both sides.
Hmm.
So I can't say I have a very fixed opinion. I'm a little bit indecisive when it comes
You're
to
on
that.
the fence.
I'm a little bit on the fence, yeah. Because, for example, I do believe very strongly that football is one of the few sports that brings people together. And I've seen that
In a good way.
when, in that, for example, people often with strangers over football, you can unite. This has happened to me because I've been on holiday a few times in campsites when the World Cup was on. And you can go into the bar and watch a game. And even if people are on different sides, like I remember being in a campsite and in a World Cup a few years ago, and Spain was playing, and of course we were supporting Spain, but there were Dutch people in there, and we were playing Holland, for example. But everybody was so happy with the game. And even when the game, and I can't remember who lost, even when the game was over, because everybody was united in the good feeling, afterwards the whole bar were friends with each other.
Yes, but I don't think that always happens. I think there are times where um, football tends to stir up nationalism and
Uh-huh.
xenophobia because
Mm-hmm.
you end up hating the other team. And then we all know about football violence, that we've seen that
Mm-hmm.
on the TV before. So you're right, it can be that way, but it also
Mm-hmm.
it stirs up very extreme feelings and it runs very deep. And I don't like stirring up nationalism. I don't think much
Mm-hmm.
comes of it, as if you go back through
Mm-hmm.
history, you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I see your point, but
I think
I'm not
maybe I do wonder
100%.
whether it depends on where you are. Like if you're in the home country and you're in the majority, then
Yeah.
maybe it becomes a bit xenophobic. But that experience that I had, I was on holiday in a sort of third country, and there were other tourists around from
Where were you?
different
Which country won?
countries. Well, in I can't remember who won, but I remember I was on holiday with my family and
Uh-huh.
we were watching different games, and there were different nationalities. And also I remember when I lived in Africa, there was a World Cup on. And especially when the World Cup was on, you went, because nobody had televisions because we didn't really have electricity at home. So you had to go and see the games in bars. And in Africa, the Africans, people in Guinea-Bissau loved football, but there were so many different nationalities in Guinea-Bissau that they supported different teams. And it was really easy to, like, it was a very, very nice feeling watching the football in the World Cup in Africa. So I don't know. I haven't experienced the nasty side of it, but probably it does exist. Uh-huh.
And of course, there's problems, as Gemma mentioned. She's against it because of the reasons that we already know. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Gemma means the migrant workers who were
Yeah.
abused and paid very little and not given good contracts, and actually died working over there. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them. Very poor human rights record in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
The stadiums, I think there are 6 or 7 of them, are, I think, all air conditioned, which is
Yeah.
definitely not good for global warming.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, the corruption to have and hold the competition there in the first place, and the fact of gay rights and homosexuality, which I'm sure, and that's what Gemma means as well, with refusing to recognize
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQ plus communities in Qatar. So all of those things, and holding it in the middle of the football season in Europe. Some of the players couldn't go, they had injuries. It's not the right time of year to hold the World Cup. The World Cup should be held off
Mm-hmm.
season, which
Mm-hmm.
means when the football league of most countries is not being played. So to
Mm-hmm.
have it in November is a big mistake, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion.
I think the problem is, isn't it, is because I think, well, like when I said I think football brings together, I think is that most people, doesn't matter what nationality you are, we have similar feelings, you know, like getting carried away, or that it's exciting to see a game, that you want to support a side and things like that. So those are kind of quite universal values, and the values that are represented in the sport are universal values, you know, like fair play and teamwork, all of those things. And when we think about a World Cup, I think maybe I think this, and I think a lot of people do too, is that the World Cup should be representing those kind of values. And the problem with this World Cup in Qatar is that it's just being dominated by money, isn't it, really? That the
Yes.
financial interests of the money have obliterated the sense of the sport.
Hammer agrees with
Maybe.
me as well. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Gina says, terrible time to have it. Yeah, of course it is.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible time to have
Yeah.
a World Cup final,
And it's
a
not
World Cup
appropriate. It's
competition.
not an appropriate place to have it, really, is it? When the temperatures are so high that normally you can't play in that temperature.
Exactly.
That seems rather silly, really.
When you say confronted, Mamen, do you mean confrontational feelings or mixed feelings, maybe? Like you're not
Mixed
exactly
feelings.
sure, a bit like Lynn, you're not sure,
Mm-hmm.
you're on the fence, you have mixed feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not wrong to have it in Qatar because it's not a big footballing country. I think it's good to promote football and
Mm-hmm.
competition in lots of different countries, but it's just the fact that their civil rights record and the way they treat people. But the last World Cup was held in Russia after they annexed Crimea.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think either you
I
remove
think that
politics completely from it,
uh,
or
uh,
you give it to a country that's 100%
mm.
clean and has never done anything wrong. And I don't think there is one.
Oh, that's what I was about to say. I don't think there's a single country. So I do see the hypocrisy a little bit when we're criticizing a lot Qatar, because I think that there's no country really that has a pure record on anything. I mean, obviously there are some countries that have very, very severe human rights violations, and there are some countries that are very clearly, openly intolerant of other communities, which isn't it doesn't fit in. But I don't think that, I think it's very dangerous if you start to create a list of all the things that you have to have before you can play football, because that's not real life. And football is played in places that have bad human rights records, that are dictatorships, that they're played in these countries.
They are.
And that hasn't got anything to do with football. And on the contrary, sometimes if you do have a World Cup and you can have the opportunity to integrate into other societies, maybe that can actually change. If you want the world to change for the better, we have to deal with people. It's no good excluding people from things. But on the other hand, I do seriously think that this World Cup is just being dominated really by money. And
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and I think that's it. It leaves a bitter taste in people's mouths as well, and it seems to be very hypocritical, I think. Mm-hmm.
That's a nice expression. Let me make a note of that. To leave a bitter taste in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. In your month? No, in your mouth.
In your mouth.
Yeah, Mamin was clarifying that I think she meant conflicted. She's conflicted about the love for the sport itself and the hypocrisy in it. So she's
I
conflicted.
understand. Yeah. No, I
She
think,
has
and
mixed feelings. Yeah.
I agree too. I think most people are conflicted by it, and because it's in the news now, people are beginning to ask themselves: should we watch it? Should we not watch it? Because of course there's so much news about the whole thing. Yeah, should we be playing? Should we be watching? If we're criticizing the footballers for playing there, then obviously we shouldn't be watching. If you want to be consistent, yes,
Yeah.
and I'm watching it very clearly. I haven't watched
Me
today's
too.
game,
I'm
but
very
I
weak.
will be watching it. But that doesn't mean, and I don't think that if you watch it, it means that you agree with bad human rights or that you agree with discriminating against minorities. I think that's too simplistic when we associate those things.
Yeah. Christine,
It's more
well,
complex than that.
Alberto says correctly, and I agree that money corrupts.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Christine, I've conflicting
Hmm.
feelings
Hmm.
about the
Very
fact the
good.
World Cup is taking place in a country which is not in line with basic football principles such as respect and tolerance.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe we can
Not,
move on a little bit there, because I like that comment. But, I often ask myself, it's not just with the World Cup in Qatar, but what are the basic football principles? Because people say they are respect and tolerance, but most of big game football nowadays is not, is it? It's very dominated by money and viewing rights and big salaries for footballers. I mean, the top footballers, they have such huge salaries. Are they justified, do you think, in your opinion?
well, it's
Is
the
there too
market.
much money in football?
N-
Is there too much money in football?
Well, you can ask the same question about entertainment, Hollywood, etc., actors, actresses. I don't think so. It's the market that dictates, and if there is so much money in football, the TV rights, the advertising rights are astronomical. So there's
Hmm.
so much money moving, and a lot of it does go to the players.
Hmm.
It's a lot of money, but the market is there, and the market accepts that that's the money that the players are asking for or demanding.
Mm.
So it moves with the market, doesn't it? If
Yeah,
people don't want to
probably.
pay it, then they won't pay it. What do you think?
Hmm. I think it's true, and I also occasionally I've got girls, and my girls weren't interested in football, which is strange, because in Spain there's a lot of girls now playing football, which I think
Yeah.
is really positive. But my daughters didn't actually play football, so I never had to go to support them, because if you're a mum, even if you don't like football, you can become a football mother. My sister became a football mother because she had two boys. So she was never interested in football herself, but because she used to go to the games to support and encourage her kids to play in the games. Yeah. So I think that happens to a lot of parents, that they get into football, even though maybe they're not that into it. But one thing that I did see, and I was shocked at, is the way, like, football is supposed to encourage tolerance and fair play. And when I went to these games with the kids and the coaches on the football field were trying to be tolerant and do fair play and good team play and shake each other's hands and all of that. But the parents who were watching the games, they were disgraceful. Their behavior was terrible.
They get very involved, don't they? Get very
Yeah.
passionate
And
about their kids.
very passionate and very argumentative and very protective. And it was quite ugly to see, actually. So there's something about football that has that it can go both ways, can't it? It can be a
It's
very
divisive.
beautiful sport, but it can also be a very ugly sport
Yeah, it can
in
be
some
very
cases.
divisive, as can religion. There was a famous Liverpool football manager who was asked the question, "Do you think football is a religion in Liverpool?" Because Liverpool fans are passionate about football, and
Mhm.
he said, "No, I don't think it's a religion. It's much more serious than that." So that gives you an idea of how divisive it can be, as can other
Mhm.
subjects. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Before
right.
before we go, there are a couple of websites I'd like to share that if you are a football fan and you want to improve your English, I think you'll find these useful. So I'm putting the website addresses in the chat on YouTube and on Facebook. Premier Skills English is from the British Council. I think it's a joint website created by the British Council and the BBC. So there's videos, there's lots of football vocabulary that you can learn there. And teacher Zenek, who is a qualified teacher from the Czech Republic. He is football crazy, football mad. So he has a
Ah,
very interesting YouTube channel and teaches English through football. So
oh,
if you
wow.
are very keen, you can check out Teacher Zenik. And
Uh-huh.
finally, languagecaster.com is another website that can help you if you're interested in football. Remember, we say this very, very often. Find things that you're passionate about, that you're interested in when it comes to improving your level of English.
Yeah.
So if you don't like football, but you like photography, listen to photography podcasts or watch
Hmm.
YouTube channels in English. Whatever your hobby is, your interests, go there and listen to material in English. And it's much more interesting.
It
Um,
is. And do you know that now I know that in England, it's probably not good for people who are in South America because it's a very long way to go. But if you're in Spain, a lot of people send their kids to England to language schools, in the
mhm,
summer for a week or 2 weeks. And I do know now that there are football camps that you can send the kids to. And
absolutely.
the big football businesses like Arsenal and Chelsea and Manchester, they actually run football camps in English for the summer, where the kids, and I think that that's a lovely way for kids to learn English too, because instead of going into a classroom and learning English like they do probably in their home country in schools, or like the way we teach it, Craig and I, they're actually learning another skill, and it's being taught through English, and that's a fantastic way to learn English and improve your skills. And you can do that for any topic. So if you like photography, as you said, go to England and do photography course, in
Absolutely.
English, and that's a really useful way of improving your English.
Emma said that in the past her son played basketball,
Ah,
which is also a very popular sport here in Spain.
yeah.
Before we go, could you let us know which team you would like to win the World Cup this year in Qatar? I've put my two choices there. I've got two.
England and Spain.
Maybe you only have one country that you're rooting for, to root
I
for a
have
team that's a
three.
sport team.
I have three plus
Germany,
four. No, I have England first, then Spain, then Germany, because I lived in all of those countries. Unfortunately, I've
And
also
then an
lived in
African
Guinea-Bissau,
country.
but they're
Yeah.
not in the World Cup.
Senegal
So
are in.
Senegal in. Oh, well, I might go for
Yeah.
Senegal in fourth, because
Uh-huh.
I did spend some time in Senegal. The
There
nice
you go.
people in Senegal, and then if they're all out, then I will be the fair weather supporter, and I'll decide in the final which one I'm going for. But I will definitely go for one. I'll definitely see the final, I'm sure.
You've got
Mhm.
to. So yeah, while we're saying goodbye, please write in the chat who you will be shouting for and supporting. We'd be curious to know that. And before we go, we'd like to say thank you. We hope this has been useful. You've got some vocabulary. You can now talk about English, the World Cup in English, and football with your friends. And I'll say goodbye. So I'm Craig from mansioningles.com. What did I
I'm
say?
just laughing because Alberto Garcia says, I also have three: Spain, Spain, and Spain.
Yes. mansioningles.com, where you can study English for free, and lots of courses and material there. Also, don't forget the podcast, inglespodcast.com. And the course is closed. The course I'm starting next week for conversation, this week for
Ah,
conversation, is
mhm.
closed. It's full, but I will be doing another course in January. So if you are interested in studying English with me and a small group of motivated students, go to englishmasterclass.net. Put your email address on that website and I will be in touch with more details.
Mhm.
Lynn?
Okay, and my name is my name is Put It No, my name is Lynn. And putitlikethis.com is my website. And if you're interested in tailor-made online classes, then go to the website. You'll find out information about the types of classes I do. And there's also a contact page where you can contact me if you want more information. Okay,
Okay.
so off to
So
see the football then.
off to see the football. You just joined at the end, Francisco, so you can watch the replay if you're interested in football, which you don't like whatsoever. So that's fine. We'll see you. Oh, next week there will not be a live stream. I have a meeting at that time, so I cannot go online next Wednesday. But hopefully, Lynn and I will be back
We'll be
in
back
2
in 2 weeks'
weeks.
time.
And I won't have to keep blowing my nose because my cold will have disappeared by then. Let's hope. Okay, fingers crossed.
And we hope the thing is, we hope we both have voices, because in 2 weeks' time, maybe we have shouted out so much in the football supporting of the World Cup. Maybe we are hoarse. Hoarse
Yes.
means when you have no voice.
Whoever you're supporting, best of luck. And
Yeah.
thank you for watching. We'll see you soon. Take
Okay.
care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Gina.